Welcome everybody to Dope Interviews. I'm your host, Warren Shaw, and we're back here with another great episode with one of my favorite people in NBA Twitter, in the world, period. Mirin Fader. Mirin here is an award-winning, you heard me, an award-winning journalist, now turned author. Look at her. She's so humble and so bashful. But she's got a great, amazing new book that is literally tearing up the book space, if you will. Everyone is hyped about it. Her new book, Giannis, The Improbable Rise of an MVP, is about to drop here in days, really, or about a week from our recording. Mirin, how the hell are you? How you feeling?
Oh, I'm good. It's so good to be with you, Warren. I'm great. I love coming on here, so I'm good. I'm a little tired, but I'm happy.
Yeah, and that's actually my first question. Just like, how are you feeling? Are you just tired of this kind of like relentless promotion when you're writing a book and you're an author now and all the promoting you have to do for it? Just like, what's that schedule like for you?
It's been a lot, but it's a privilege. I know I'm so lucky. I'm more just like, I'm not used to being, the person getting interviewed or like being in the spotlight. Like when you were reading your intro, I was like hiding because, it's so weird for me. Like I like to be the faceless person in the back interviewing somebody. So it's been such a new experience, like promoting my work and getting out there. And I feel thankful that people want to talk with me at all. But yeah, it was crazy because when the Bucks won, it was like a double promotion. It was just like, let's talk about the playoffs and this. And so the timing was just crazy. I'm a very lucky person.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's so in our own quote unquote circles, right? We'll have a conversation like, man, what a great idea. And what an added boost. This guy just, delivered one of the most legendary NBA Finals performances and, wins his first championship weeks before a book is coming out about him by, one of NBA's darlings, NBA Twitter's darlings here in Mirin. So just that is really kudos to you. And I before we get any more into the book, just did you ever think you'd be in this position to be an author and telling stories of MVPs and guys who may be in the Hall of Fame someday?
No. And what's crazy is like, I always wanted to be. And, when I started my career, I think this must have been either right after I met you or before, but I was at the Orange County Register and, my boss was just like not really seeing my potential. And he's like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I was like, I want to be a national magazine writer and I want to write my first book. And he laughs and it's so embarrassing and painful. And it really hurt. But, it's like looking back now, it's like, I did it in 5 years, and like I was motivated by that moment. So I definitely never saw this coming, but I always really wished and worked for it and wanted it to happen.
So, we'll jump around here a bit because it's you and I. Like people who are listening and like
Tell
that's
them.
my people's right there. That's my people's. Mirin and I, we definitely got started. She's obviously 1,000 times better than I could ever be in this overall space. But we spent some time together at Dime Magazine, and some of the interesting times we had going through that process. With that entity and that outlet. So we'll jump around. We're just gonna have a conversation. It's not gonna be your typical interview where it's very line by line and very linear. So when that former boss had that conversation with you and, you said like, dang, was it really kind of the pick yourself up by the bootstraps? Like, did you kind of in your head, I'm gonna show him type of thing? Or is it was just like, okay, and you kind of tucked it away and just knew that you were just going to continue to work at it?
Yeah, I remember that day I was really sad, like it really hurt, but I didn't have time to be hurt because I had to drive to Cal State Fullerton to do this women's tennis story. And obviously like nobody was going to read it, but my mom, like nobody was trying to read this women's tennis story. So I just remember sitting in the parking lot and like calling her and telling her what happened. And then I went from sad to angry and I was like, I'm going to show him, he's going to be mad in a couple years, but I've just always had that in the back of my head. I wouldn't say it was like the predominant thing over the next couple of years, but I definitely remember when I signed the book deal, I was like, just checking the clock. It's 5 years. I did it, and I haven't heard from that editor since, but yeah, it just felt good to like prove him wrong.
And when you have that ability to, not necessarily put it in their face, you know what I mean? But it's just
Right.
like, they're watching like, damn it. Yeah, you know what I mean?
God knows what he's doing, but
it's so gratifying. I mean, I've had a recent situation in my quote unquote full-time work where somebody who definitely hated on me when I was coming up had to send me like, hey, congratulations. Like, bro, you're not happy for me. But you know what I mean? But you just want me to know that you see what's happening, but you're not happy for me. You know what I mean? So I'm excited.
At least you said something.
Yeah. It's different. We still waiting. Yours is coming. Maybe when the book releases, you can drop by, or maybe you should just send them an autographed copy. Like, yo, hold that.
My friend was like, you should send him a copy. I'm like, that's not me. I'm gonna be classy. I'm gonna move on. But yeah, it's funny because when you said that, I immediately like remember that moment. So I guess it is still in me.
Yeah, no, it's hard to forget those who doubt you for real. And we're talking here with Mirin Fader. Make sure you're following her on Twitter at Mirin Fader, common spelling. Mirin, so let's get a little bit about the book, right? So from my understanding, I want to take a little bit differently from maybe everybody you've had the conversations with, but it came across as maybe this book specifically wasn't your original intent. It kind of developed out of another story that you were doing. And you're like, well, maybe I could do this. So can you discuss that a little bit and what kind of led you down this path to discuss Giannis?
Yeah, exactly. I went to Milwaukee in summer 2019 to profile Giannis's youngest brother, Alex, because, he was really good at the time and he was considered one of the top high school prospects in the country. And I was at Bleacher Report at the time, and like BR was very big on like, who's the next big thing? And, I was really curious, like, is Alex good, or is he just, Giannis's brother, or like, how tough must it be to be fourth in line? Like, that's so much pressure. So I went not expecting to even meet Giannis, and then he just showed up in their home, and I ended up just luckily spending the day with them. And I really didn't think anything of a book at the time. The story came out, had a really nice reception, but the one thing I kept hearing was like, wow, like Giannis is so thoughtful and so nurturing. I guess I just didn't really know much about him, and because he hadn't even won his first MVP at that point. So I had been trying to write a book myself for the last couple of years, as we mentioned. And, it just, for whatever reason, like the ideas that I had either like weren't good enough, or they were good, but they weren't things that publishers thought could sell, or literary agents were like, I like you, but you're too young. There was just like always something not right. But when this came out, a literary agent that I was talking to, really was awesome and believed in me. And he's like, yeah, I think this could totally be the one. So it just happened by chance. And yeah, so I turned in the proposal December 2019. We shopped it around early 2020, and then signed the deal right as the pandemic started in March 2020.
So talk to me a little bit about that, though. I mean, it really, to even hear that, I don't know, were they kind of pigeonholing you, if you will? It's like, you can write these articles for Bleacher Report or whatever, but an author, being a book writer, not so much. Like, and you even kind of mentioned maybe in passing, they're like, you're too young. Like, we're still in that. We're still doing that.
I know. It was really frustrating because they were complimentary, but there was always like something, like, okay, you're 27, or oh, you're 28, and to me, I'm like, I'm getting to 30. I'm not 21, like I'm not a rookie, but I'm not a veteran, I'm kind of like in the middle, I guess.
You're in your prime though, right? You're about to be at the MVP stage.
So, okay, he said that, not me, not agreeing. And listeners, I did not say that. And, I was just like very determined, and I really wanted to break in, but I just kind of like didn't have the right idea. I think book writing is just so fickle, because whatever idea you have, the thing that the publisher is thinking is like, will this sell? Like, is this going to do well? And that's just like a different mindset with long form stories, which is like, is this a good story? Like, that's the only thing that really matters. I mean, like for me, I know other people, have to worry about like clicks or all these things. I've just been like really privileged to not. But with books, it was just always something. And so when I did find the literary agent that is my agent now, he was just like, I think you have a lot of books in you. Like, I really believe in you. And it was just so awesome to hear, you're like, you need somebody to give you a chance. And he was great.
No, I'm glad to hear that. I mean, it looks like you're going to make some ducats, off this door. Yeah, and then it kind of launches, that next phase for you. So the book is 15 chapters roughly. What's your favorite chapter and why?
Oh man, my favorite chapter is called Lonely. I think it's chapter 6. And this was like midway through Giannis's rookie season in Milwaukee. And I really love this chapter because I think we all like collectively fell in love with Giannis when he was a rookie because he was like having smoothies and being really endearing and adorable. And oh my God, who's this sweet Greek kid? And I just think he looked like he was having a great time and we all thought everything was all good. But in Lonely, I talk about how hard things were for him and how close he was to quitting and coming home to Greece because he was so lonely, and hence the title. And just having that vulnerability in the book was so important to me because I think with Giannis's story, like because it's so insane, people, oh, American dream, rags to riches, great, and they just like gloss over all of these like really hard moments. So I wanted to make sure that we told like the full accurate story of all that he was dealing with like off the court.
Yeah, no, extremely, extremely, extremely well written, and it kind of pulls at the heartstrings a little bit and it peels behind some of the layers there. So as you're talking about that, right, it brings me to like this question, because we all have our preconceived notions or stories that we heard about a player or a person, so forth and so forth. So going into this, and I know as an author, you always have to be objective and be, even doing an interview, you don't want to just be led by certain questions. It needs to be a certain level of or being organic to really get the full story behind that. But was there something in there as you were peeling back the layers where you were like, oh, I didn't know, where it changed your opinion or thought process on what he was about, or something that maybe even happened in his life?
I think that that's a good question. I think I was not surprised necessarily or had something that changed my opinion, but I was definitely like, this is the first time I'm hearing this side of his life. So I think that we just kind of know nothing about his childhood, and except like, okay, grew up impoverished, like sold trinkets on the street, but that's like really it, and I was really, it just really hit me learning about how tough it was for him to be undocumented growing up, also experiencing a lot of racism and not having the proper documentation he needed to have the same opportunities as his peers. And I think that part of his story is completely left out. We know that he gets drafted out of nowhere, but we actually knew nothing about the behind the scenes stuff about how basically the Greek government only gave him citizenship because they saw he could do good for them in the NBA. So essentially he lives his whole life not being treated well. And he was treated well by some people for sure, but he was not able to get documentation and papers, and he dealt with a lot of racism. And so I think that was really important, and it didn't really change the way I thought of him because I knew this was likely a thing, because I know that if you are a child of migrants in Greece and you were born in Greece, they still don't consider you Greek. You don't get birthright citizenship. So I knew that, but I guess I just didn't know the depth of his experiences because he's never really talked about it.
Yeah. So that, I don't know, when you think about kind of like the political aspect of, that whole process, even for him, his family and things of that nature, there's some stuff in there about how tight he really is with his family. And I think we see, let's keep it a buck, right? We see a lot of NBA guys say, oh, family is everything. But like, this is a next level. So without necessarily diving into like a specific story from the book, but just talk to us a little bit about that aspect and what you learned about him, truly how connected he really is to his family, and how they really are everything for him.
They really are everything. I mean, when you're growing up in a situation like he did, where it's normal for you to eat your first meal of the day at 11 p.m. sometimes, it's normal to struggle. You don't necessarily register that we're not doing okay at first. it's just your normal life. And so for Giannis, he had a very happy childhood because he was surrounded by so much love and he was around his family 24/7. I mean, the brothers slept side by side and the family was always there. And I think people don't realize they would have to leave together as a family and sell and just be gone for 2 weeks because they had to do this as a family. And so, Giannis was not necessarily around his friends all the time. He was always around his family. And I think because his life was so hard, and this is something we do as media, we fixate on the trauma, we don't zoom out on the joy. And so, my hope with this book is it shows that, okay, yes, there were these really hard moments, but as a family, they created joy out of the worst circumstances. They laughed, they had fun, they made games out of little things like walking to the bus. I mean, they were resourceful, they were creative, they were joyous, they were happy. So I think that part gets lost in the narrative too. And as you mentioned, it's a different level of closeness. Jared Dudley was one of my favorite interviews, and he was telling me that like he had to tell Giannis, because he used to be on the Bucks, he had to tell Giannis, like, Giannis, you're your own man now. Giannis was 21. He's like, you got to move out of your mom's house. Like, you gotta take these steps as a man. And Giannis was like, no, like, this is the most unfathomable thing you could ask of me. Again, different level of closeness. So I think it's really genuine, and it's super beautiful what they have.
We're talking with Mirin Fader here, author of the new book, Giannis, the Improbable Rise of an NBA MVP. Follow her at Twitter, again, at Mirin Fader. So you just mentioned Jared Dudley, right? Mm-hmm. And that kind of leads me into, the next kind of question. I'm sure you've been asked this maybe 1,000 times over, but I'm going to ask it again anyway. Just who was your most valuable resource, in this book, and trying to give you stories and give you insight into what, Giannis's life was like?
I'm going to go with Alex, his youngest brother, because I talked with all the brothers, but Alex and Giannis have this connection that is so insane for people 9 years apart. I think that like watching Giannis through baby brother's eyes was fascinating. Giannis is so focused and he's always looking ahead, but like Alex is very introspective and he's a thinker, and he thinks about the past and he thinks about the future. He's just always thinking. And that comes with being a baby brother. Your life is observing your brothers before you because they're your superheroes long before they were superheroes. So I think like learning about Giannis through his eyes was fascinating to me. And I guess to piggyback on that, also talking with their mom, because she just doesn't talk to reporters. And so I'm very thankful that I had that interview and was able to put that in there because, she didn't want to talk to me about how great Giannis was at basketball. She wanted to talk about like what a kind brother, what a kind son, and how little Alex used to sing to her when she was sick. Again, it's these themes of family like you're talking about. It's almost like they forget that they're super famous basketball people. They're just like, we're just people. Like, what's your name? It's really awesome. It's really awesome.
Super, super warm, right? And I think as you matriculate through the book, you really get a sense of who he is, who he was, and then probably who he'll continue to be, because some people change, and it's very easy for money and fame and everything like that to change you. I mean, even as we're recording here, right? A quote just came out, I think a couple of days ago. He's like, I don't want to be the face of the league. And Harden and KD can have those things. He just wants to be with his family and, as a father and things of that nature. So did you get any insight into like his introspect as a man and like what it means for him to be a father now? I said, he started writing this, I guess, roughly around the time he had his, maybe like roughly, like there's some overlap there. So just kind of what was that like, and what can you tell us about him as a father that you learned?
Yeah, exactly. So he, it's weird because all his brothers say he's been preparing to be a father his whole life. He's essentially played that father role. Even at age 13, when the family was getting evicted, Giannis would have to be like the leader of his brothers and keep a stiff upper lip and just say, okay, get your stuff, we'll be okay. Then when their dad dies, when Giannis is like 25, 26 years old, he is again thrust into that like father position. Again, not yet an actual father, but just making sure they're okay. Like he's used to sacrificing everything to make sure everyone's okay, which is like the number one trait of a father, right? And he learned that from his own father, Charles. And so I think losing his dad was so devastating, but then a couple of years later to become a dad and have a son of his own, it's part healing and also part slipping into a role that he's just always wanted. Like it's funny because earlier in his career, his teammates would say, talk to him about dating and like getting married and stuff. And Giannis would be like, no, I don't want to because I want to focus on basketball. And, he was telling Johnny O'Brien, like, when you have a kid, like you have to be at home and like, I want to be on the court, which is like so real, like love the honesty, but then he grows up and he's in a space now where he's really just maturing, and not just as a player, like we've seen in the playoffs, but just into a man and a father. And that's his priority, and I think it's really cool that last year he went to Greece with his son for the first time. And I was just thinking, like, his child is looking at these streets, and like Giannis knows his child is never going to have the same experiences that he had. Like that is success. Even if Giannis becomes or doesn't become face of the league, whatever that means, he's already succeeded, And so I just think what they have is really cool.
No, it is. And I mean, I think the measure of any person, when they're raising somebody, is that you want to make sure that you provide a better life for them than you have. And he's obviously going to do that by leaps and bounds, in a lot of ways, but it's got to be super surreal to kind of walk some of those streets and know what you had to go through in those streets. And now you can really kind of walk and be in some ways elevated, if you will, too, and looking to maybe help and give back in that community, that, was rough on you for a little bit as well, too. Mirin, so before we let you get out of here, great stuff. I'm super, super excited about your success and do consider you a friend.
You too. They can't see my face. They can't see my face, but I'm smiling ear to ear, holding my heart.
It's all love. I want to talk a little bit more about you and just your path, as you will. I think intentionally and maybe even unintentionally, you are an inspiration, I think, to female journalists as well, too, and to journalists and all the like. So what is that like for you? And as you transition from some major outlets, I mean, you spent some time, at ESPN, I believe, as well. And, obviously Bleacher Report and the Ringer and so forth, but what's it kind of like to be that inspiration, kind of at the tender age, even though being under 30, if you will, and the girl's like, yo, I want to be Mirin. As I say, always read Mirin, right? So what's that like for you, and how surreal is that?
Well, number one, surreal that I am 30 now. I just turned 30. And thank you for your kind words. It's so nice of you. It is really surreal, meeting up with women as I've done over the past couple of years, and just them sitting across the table from me and being like, I want to do what you do. Like, how do I do what you do? Like, help me. Like, just like taking out a notebook, hanging on my words like I was doing with them, like 7 years ago, 8 years ago. It's so surreal, and I get so emotional about it because it like really matters to me. And like before the Bucks won the title and life went totally chaotic, I was doing about 2 calls with prospective journalists a week. And this work I don't get paid for, but it doesn't matter. Like, I really want to help. And even though I'm young and I'm still like figuring out myself and my life, like I do want to help as many people as I can. And, somebody told me they started writing because they read my Brandon Ingram profile a couple of years ago. And first of all, I thought they were lying because I'm like, okay, that profile really wasn't that good. Like, don't stop hyping me up. But second, I was just like, that's crazy. Again, like I was the lowest on the totem pole, like at the Register. Like, my editor laughed at me when I said I wanted to be a national magazine writer and an author. Like people were not like, wow, she's going to be a good writer. A lot of people didn't really give me a shot. I used to, I hate Twitter, but I used to like retweet myself and like try to be like, what is the best time to do this? So a Ramona Shelburne sees it, like that was like a very distinct stage in my life, and just getting upset when no one would read it. And, and I was on the outside looking in. Like, I got laid off after my first 4 years at the Orange County Register. I had to become a full-time freelancer, with ESPN and Bleacher Report. It wasn't until they sent me to Lithuania, which, by the way, I was freelance for the LaMelo Ball story. Did they hire me? And when we worked together at Dime, I don't know about you, but I didn't get paid. So
Not a
yeah,
problem.
not a dime. I see what you did there. I'm talking to a writer. Yeah, so it's just for me, everyone's like, wow, it's happened so fast, but I don't really, for me, I'm like, really? Because I just worked so hard. But again, it's not like, oh, I made this happen. There were people that helped me and it was a village. And I really hate anyone that says, oh, I'm self-made. Like, no, you're not. So anyways, that's a long-winded way of saying, like, I'm honored that anyone even looks at me that way. And it's just really meant a lot to me that people are supporting this book, because this has been the ambition for so long.
Nah, you're definitely doing it. And trust me, I know, sometimes you're writing and there might be 14 views on something,
Right.
you're beginning out and it's like, dang, do I suck?
or did my mother do 13 of them?
It's facts. It's just straight facts. My God. Mirin, last one for you, just and for people and anybody listening, right?
Yeah.
So you've had the ability to freelance and work, and now again, transition from ESPN to Bleacher. I mean, really big names, and now to be at the Ringer. What brought you to the Ringer, and how? Talk to like the young journalists out there. How do you negotiate a situation like that? I mean, getting into these big name entities where, hey, what's your pitch to them, and what's the value that you can bring to those entities when they're getting a dime a dozen, no pun intended, in terms of people reaching out to them to write and to maybe even to freelance. Yeah. How do you stand out in a crowd like that and kind of secure the bag, if you will, like you have for the Ringer?
Right. Yeah. Well, so my situation was really unexpected. I was at Bleacher Report, as you know, before this, and we had layoffs in like August 2020. So like right in the thick of the pandemic. And I was actually the only one that didn't get laid off. So I was obviously lucky to still be employed, but I also like couldn't do my job there anymore because they laid off my editor as well as like all 15 people on our team. And so like, Bleacher just thought I could like stay without being edited. I don't know what they were, I don't know what they were thinking, but like I literally could not do my job anymore, even though I was, receiving a paycheck. And so I hadn't wanted to leave because I really loved working there. And I know it sounds cliche, but I was really like family with my people there. Like we are lifelong friends. Like, our group chats are hilarious, like forever friends. But it just, I had to go. And, at that point I had an agent who thankfully helped with that. And I interviewed at some places. And when I was talking with the Ringer, I just felt like they understood me and they understood who I am and what I want to do. I think that people kind of like don't understand how like what I do is, how do I say this? It's not really the thing that's wanted in 2021. I'm a long form writer, so I'm not for everybody. So I have to find the place that values that and respects that and is going to give me the freedom and time and space to do that. And Ringer like 100% did that. And so I think the pitch that, for up and coming journalists to have and just ways to stand out is that, you don't have to come across like everything. And I think that there's this tendency to be really like fake it till you make it. And there are moments, of course, where I did that too. But I think it's better to be authentic and honest. I straight up told the Ringer, like, you know what, I'm so interested in coming here because I would love to get better at audio and I would love to have a narrative podcast at some point. But I'm going to be honest, I don't have any experience in that. But I am a very quick learner. And I am really passionate about what I do, but I'm just telling you that up front. So I think some people would look at that and say, wow, you're admitting your weaknesses. I think it's more genuine and honest. Sell your strengths and admit areas that you want to genuinely conquer and why this will be a good fit for you. I think the other thing is like, we live in this era of like social clout and like trying to be funny and trying to be cool. And I always tell journalists, like, you don't have to be cool or funny unless you naturally are. And that's awesome. And I'm jealous. But, like, you don't have to be like the person on Twitter 24/7 cracking jokes. Like, it's okay to be old school and just want to report the hell out of a story. Like, do that. Like, killing a story, being serious about your work, that's cool. Like, that is really cool. Like, don't be ashamed to be passionate about your work. And there's nothing I hate more than when people write, like, just wrote a thing. I think it's so disrespectful to like the craft and the editors and, everyone who busted their ass to help with your thing, So I would just say, like, be authentic, be yourself, but don't be ashamed to love this and want to be great at writing. Like, yes, there are opportunities that aren't there, but there also are, and people want people that can make deadline and oh, you're giving me 2 days to do a 4,000 word feature. Okay, I'm going to get this done. So just be relentless in showing up every single time, because I guarantee you, like, that's going to separate you from people that just want to have the clout and not do the work. Everyone wants to be a writer, but very few people want to write. So I think just separate yourself by just constantly putting stuff out there that you're proud of. So that was a really long answer.
It was very well said. I'm a chop that up and put it out here for everyone listening so they can understand. Words to live by Mirin. So, like, that is it. So what's next? I know you've heard. Obviously, you want to continue to write books and things of that nature. Anything that you can tease for us here before we let you get out of here?
I'm trying to come up with book number 2. So if you or your listeners have ideas of who would make a good subject, tweet at me. I want to know. I've set a neurotic goal for myself to have the proposal out by the end of the year, but that might be hard. So we'll see. I have some more Ringer features coming up after the book launch that I'm excited about, and doing some more football. I kind of was like very basketball heavy. So I'm kind of excited about that. I'm like the weirdo that likes to like jump around and randomly do a track story and then basketball and swimming, and I'm just all over the place. So.
Keep it diversified. It keeps it interesting.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's definitely who you are. I want to thank you, Mirin, for spending part of your day here on this super, super busy tour and launch that you have going on. Again, make sure you follow Mirin at Mirin Fader on Twitter. Cop the book wherever outlets, digital, however you want to get it. Get that in your library. Read it, put it on your book. Read it again, and make sure you guys are commenting and tweeting about it. Mirin, we thank you so much for joining us here on Dope Interviews. This has been a Dope Interview. I'm your boy, Warren Shaw. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll catch up with you next time.